This is The Toss-Up, where an expert-line panel dissects the hottest stories within the world of sports. From some of the nation's strongest college programs right here in Bloomington to the games and moments that capture the world's attention, it's all right here on The Toss-Up, and it starts right now. Ali Patberg came back, Indiana took down a top 10 opponent and gained a staple resume win, and looked like a near lock for the NCAA tournament, until they ran into Lindsey Pulliam and Northwestern. Pulliam seemingly could not miss, much like her performance in Bloomington earlier in the season, and buried the Hoosiers down the stretch. Now with one regular season game to go, Indiana is smack dab on the bubble, again. They do have 5 wins against teams safely inside the top 50 in the RPI, but have some bad losses too. The bottom line is, as was the case going into the Northwestern game, the Hoosiers control their own destiny. They don't need other teams to lose. They don't need a couple of teams to keep winning just to help their resume. They need to take care of business. Beat Purdue, win a game in the Big Ten tournament, and they're right at 20 wins, a fairly safe benchmark for a Big Ten team. If Indiana simply beats the teams it's supposed to, they'll be dancing. But as we all know, it's never, ever that simple. So buckle up. Hi, everybody. This is The Toss-Up. My name is Michael Dugan. Joining me on the panel this week, we have Griffin Gonzalez, an IUS TV women's basketball beat reporter, Jordan Gould, a WIUX BTN Student U women's basketball broadcaster, and the mayor, Jack Grossman, a BTN Student U women's basketball broadcaster. Jack, kick it to you first here. Where do they stand in terms of the bubble after that Northwestern loss?
Well, you put it perfectly, Michael. They are squarely on the bubble. It's about as 50-50 as you can get because they were in the last 4 in the ESPN bracketology that was released the day before the Northwestern game. Then you lose by 20 on the road against a team that's not going to make the tournament. That's not a good look, what you want late in the season. So Indiana absolutely needs to beat Purdue on Sunday. Like you said, likely win 1, maybe 2 games in the Big Ten tournament to feel safe. But it is about as 50-50 as you could get right now, to where Indiana has some really good wins. That Iowa win, really the reason they're being considered at all right now. But they need to do more work to feel safe about hearing their name called on Selection Monday.
Yeah, Indiana basketball in general, quite an enigma. I mean, you look at the men, the women, but really, you know, this team has been a little different since Ali Patberg came back, of course. That she was out for those 3+ games with a dislocated shoulder. So she comes back, they beat a top 10 Iowa team, fantastic win. Then they go on to Evanston, and they just really struggle. They put up their lowest scoring output of the season, 49 points. And that's not going to cut it. You're not going to win many games. And they got Purdue coming up on Sunday, where they only put up 53 in the last time they played them. So, you know, it's going to be tough, but I think that this team controls their own destiny. So if they beat Purdue, they win a game in the Big Ten tournament, kind of like what you were saying, Michael, I'd say, you know, they control their own fate. I think they get in, but it's up to them.
I mean, we're right. It's fascinating. Just this team, there's not been a game this season where there was a point in the game where you did not think this team could not win a game. And that's an interesting point of this team, because sometimes you walk into a game against Maryland, you think there's no chance here. They showed fight in that game. They showed fight in Iowa and won. They showed fight against Rutgers, both home and on the road. So it's an interesting point where they're at. I think they're not safe, but I don't think they're in desperation yet, because before they lost that 4-game losing streak a few months ago, they were still a 10 seed. They came out of that, they beat Iowa, still a 10 seed. So I think they're still safe. It is starting to get a little worrisome, though. It'll be interesting to see what happens going down the stretch.
Part of that does have to do with the fact that Patberg was hurt, and they did get Patberg back.
Exactly.
So you kind of excuse those losses a little bit. But even to your point, in that Northwestern game a couple nights ago, there was a point where they had gotten back into it and tied the game in the second quarter. It looked like they had some momentum. It just didn't hold up.
And I go back to, listen, the committee wants good games in the tournament. They don't want bad games in the tournament. At the end of the day, IU women's basketball has been able to provide that. And they've been able to give great games. And you're going to get a good game with Indiana way more than you're going to get with UC Davis at the end of the day. So I think that's going to be something the committee looks at as well.
So the panic button's right here. They don't have their hand over it, They're not ready to hit it, but they've got their eyes on the panic button. That's
Yeah.
pretty safe to say.
They know where it is.
They know where
And
it
the other
is.
thing is, Terry Morin said the sense of urgency has already passed. If you're don't have a sense of urgency at this point in the season, you're playing the wrong game. Those are very words. And now you're looking back and saying, she's kind of right.
Yeah, she's exactly
Yeah.
right. She's exactly right. So how much of a must-win is this Purdue game? Pending some, it wouldn't be quite a miracle because they've shown that they're capable of it, but pending some improbable run in the Big Ten tournament, they're probably not going to make it if they lose this Purdue game, right or wrong?
I'm going to say right and wrong if I can.
Come on, Griffin, we
I know.
gotta get you
I
to
do it
pick
all
a
the time.
side.
I do it all the time. But here's the thing. I look at the Purdue game. First of all, it's a game they should have won in West Lafayette. That was a great game all the way towards the end. They should have had that one. It slipped through their fingers at the end. Now tomorrow it has big implications because you're looking at Purdue, who's the 10th seed, Indiana, who's the 11th seed. That game is separated by this game that's going down this Sunday. If Indiana wins that game, they get the first round bye and Purdue has to play the first round, and vice versa. If Indiana wins, they get to go play a Iowa team, which they have, eventually play an Iowa team, but first they have to go through, I believe it is Minnesota, a
Yes.
7th seed.
Who's hot, by the way? They're playing
They're
very
hot,
well.
but they're not unbeatable.
Right. Yeah.
They're not unbeatable. And instead, what you'd have to do is you'd first have to beat an Illinois team, and then you have to go on to play Northwestern by the time you would have to play that second game. So obviously, Hoosiers want to stay as far away from Northwestern as possible based on what we've been able to see them do. But I think moving forward, like I said, it's a big win. You need it. You want it. But we'll see what happens.
To start the season off with 10 straight wins, then going 15-2, and then just going 3-9 in the last 12 games. I mean, it's just totally two different tales for this team. And yeah, you turn to Big Ten play where things started to shift a little bit, and you turn to the offense, which has been a struggle, and especially when Ali Patberg was absent in those 4 games, they couldn't get over 61 points. They couldn't skate that amount. So, it's been a struggle at times, and then in the Northwestern game, Brenna Wise only had 7 points. Where was the Brenna Wise that scored 27 against Iowa, right? I mean, they were really counting on her to show up. But, I mean, if Brenna Wise and Ali Patberg, that duo shows up, and Ali Patberg, the offense has started to pick up again. Her game, I guess, especially I turned to the Iowa game, where she really performed. I wasn't sure how she was going to bounce back from that injury, but they really need her to show up big, along with Brenna Wise, again on Sunday against Purdue.
They need to win the Purdue game for all the reasons that Griffin laid out. To nothing else, just how much easier of a path they would have in the Big Ten tournament. Not saying Iowa's an easy game, but you got to stay away from Northwestern if you're Indiana. That's just a terrible matchup for them. You bring up Minnesota. Yes, they lost in Assembly Hall to the Gophers, but that was a game that they had the ball down 30 seconds left, and Patberg didn't play half the game. So you're thinking that's one you could possibly get in Indianapolis in the Big Ten tournament. But as far as the NCAA seeding goes, you need, I think, at least 2 more wins to make the tournament, trying to get to that 20-win benchmark. And it's a lot easier to do it if you can get one of those before going to Indianapolis, where it's a win or you go home scenario.
Not to mention, a close win versus a Minnesota or Iowa looks a lot better on the resume, or a close loss, I should say, than a close win against an Illinois in the first round.
Yeah, and I don't like using the term must win, but I feel like, and not to be cliche, but this is a must win game.
Yeah, the reality is they let a couple of opportunities, maybe more than a couple of opportunities in Big Ten play get away from them. And that doesn't even count the Grambling State game in Puerto Rico and one in which they lost by 3. That's their biggest stain on the resume thus far. Ohio State, Rutgers twice, Minnesota. They let a lot of games get away, and they put themselves in this position where this Purdue game is now a must-win. Jack, in that Northwestern game, a number of things plagued them, not the least of which was Lindsey Pulliam. But of all of the things that just did not go right for the Hoosiers in that game, what was most concerning, if anything?
They only scored 49 points. You got to put the ball in the basket to win in the sport of basketball. It's as simple as that. Sometimes it's very simple to give analysis, but Indiana in Big Ten play has really struggled shooting the ball. They went before January 10th against Ohio State, where they only scored 50 points. Before that game, they only had two games the entire season where they had less than 65 points. January 10th and onward, they've done that 9 times. So this is a team that really, even when they've had Ali Patberg and been at full strength, they have not hit on all cylinders offensively. They kind of speed themselves up at some points. Northwestern was a great example of that. They'd break the pressure, and then they kind of didn't know what to do. They'd go and rush up a shot instead of trying to run good offense. But they need to get consistency on the offensive end. Brenna Wise has to be more consistent. Her numbers are down in Big Ten play. Jalen Penn, even though she's been in double figures in every Big Ten game in the last 6 games, she's shooting sub 30% from the field and sub 28% from 3. So she needs to find her shot a little bit more again. And Allie Patberg needs to hit her shot a little bit more offensively as well. So you just need to kind of score points. I hate for being so simplistic, but sometimes it's as easy as that. You got to get the ball in the bucket.
Yeah, and kind of to bounce off of your poor offense theme, Jack, this team has been kind of known recently to get off to slow starts, right? Or just kind of go into spurts where they don't score. I mean, you look at that Northwestern game, they had 8 points in the third quarter. I mean, that's not going to cut it. 49 points, you're not going to win very many games unless you play, stellar defense. But, I think a big thing aside from the, kind of poor offense we've seen so far, I'd have to say the turnovers in the first half have kind of been an issue. And they've been having to play catch up as they did in that Iowa game. They were kind of lucky to get away with that than the Bender Yanni floater. But, if they can limit those turnovers and really not kind of get in those offensive spells where they just go on these droughts, then, I don't know, you give them a chance to maybe win a game in the Big Ten tournament, maybe 2, and we'll see from there.
I'm going to split it up on the two sides of the ball. On the offense, listen, when you have Allie Patberg, Brenna Wise, and Jalen Penn all scoring above 13 points, this team is pretty much unstoppable from an offensive standpoint in this league. They can do whatever they want. It makes things a lot more comfortable on the rest of the team when they can do that. When they're not doing that, and Brenna Wise has 7, and Patberg only has 14, and Jalen Penn has 6, this team's easy to beat. It's not that hard. They need to score points, and they need to find a way to score points consistently, something they haven't been able to do all season. It's been their big problem. When they can shoot the 3 well, we saw it against Iowa. When did they shoot the 3 best? In the third and fourth quarter, and that's why they won the ball game. That's what they need to focus on offense, consistency with the shooting. But if you flip on the defensive side of the ball, it's not biting on these pick and rolls. It is almost agonizing at times when you're watching from the sideline. You see it all the time. Every time there's a screen, it's that communication between the two defenders. They get mixed up, and you get a cutting player right in the middle of the lane who gets a wide open layup. I can't tell you how many points they give up per game for it. It is really sad to see from a defensive standpoint. But if you can stop that, you can get a little more communication on the defense, make defense fun. Have fun with that. Get turnovers, get blocks, make it a fun time, as fun as the offense. Then this team can get clicking really quickly. And when this team plays great defense, when they switch it up between a 2-3 zone and man pretty confidently, this team's dangerous.
And they have good defenders, too. Kim Royster is a great defender down low. Bender Yanni's an exceptional on-ball perimeter defender. Jalen Penn has played some pretty solid on-ball defense lately. Brenna Wise, too. It's a team full of good defenders, which makes the defensive struggles lately a little head-scratching.
Marchese is fantastic.
Marchese,
as
too.
well.
Marchese
Griffin
played great
brought
against
up the
Iowa.
pick and roll defense. I mean, I just remember specifically the Minnesota game a couple weeks ago on the broadcast of it. Eddie Cotton had a sideline hit. He says Terry Morin said in a timeout they want to start hedging screens. First pick and roll out of the timeout, Minnesota runs a pick and roll top of the key. I believe it was Kim Royster doesn't hedge, and you could see Terry Morin just kind of throw like her programmer on the side, like, what the heck are you doing?
Well, it's not even that. It's either it's always when on the pick and roll, it's either a quick cut that gets some wide open layups down low, or it's a wide open 3 for their point guard. You saw
They
it
don't
all the
rotate
time.
well off of it.
No, not at all.
Yeah, another thing that I kind of noticed going back to that Iowa game, Iowa got so many fast break points, really, where they just kind of went threw the ball to half court and they got an easy fast break layup. I mean, Megan Gustafson, the leading scorer in the country, I mean, she just absolutely killed them. And if they're going to try to have any success in the Big Ten tournament and beyond, they got to limit those fast break points.
Yeah. Megan Gustafson will do that to you, though.
Well,
She's done that to everybody.
Yes.
But what I liked about that is you kind of see Terry Morin's strategy. The goal was not to you can't slow her down, especially with the lack of Hoosier size and strength. But what they did is they slowed down everybody else in that Iowa game. And I think that needs to be the focus going forward. When you play in Northwestern, you got to slow their best player down. When you play in Minnesota, you got to keep locking them down, because at the end of the day, when you're playing in the Big Ten, there's going to be great players that you might not be good enough to stop. It's about limiting those people who average 3 points a game, like the Rutgers player, dropping her name right now. But
Stacia Carey?
Yep. Put average 3.
Oh, no.
Takia Davis. Takia Davis came in averaging 3, and she put up 20.
Takia Mack,
Yes.
Yeah,
Came in averaging 3, and she left with 28.
She had 3 3-pointers the entire season up to that point. Was 4 of 4 against Indiana.
Just
So
their
it's
luck.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's
Just
stuff
their
like
luck.
that.
Yeah.
It's what you used to see it a lot in the Tom Crean era with the men's basketball team, where a player would come off the bench with 3 points and end up scoring 29. And And that's going to be an issue for Terry Moore and her squad. But if you can lock those down and lock those players down who can score and find a way to make adjustments, like I said, this team can be dangerous. We've seen them be dangerous. It's a matter of can they be dangerous at the right time.
All right, we're cutting to break right now, but coming up after the break, we're going to take a look at Indiana's resume and talk tournament. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the toss-up. All right, gentlemen, it is time to play Make Your Case. The first question, Griffin, you can start us off here. Make your case that this team is a tournament team.
They're fun to watch. I think that's a huge thing. They're fun to watch, and they can be competitive with some of the best teams in the nation, and they've shown that down the stretch of the Big Ten Conference. And with as polarizing as women's basketball is in the NCAA, you want a team that can be fun. And I think you're going to see a team in the tournament that, like they did last year's tournament, hold a Michigan State team to a 4 overtime game. They're going to be fun like that. And I think if they can bring that to the tournament, they'll be fun to be in, and it'll be hard to turn them away.
You know, their non-conference schedule did not help them out. I mean, but they did take advantage of it, right? They won those first 10 games, like I said, started out 15-2. But then you get into Big Ten play, and they met Michigan State twice, came on top once, and they played Maryland. That was a struggle, and Rutgers a couple of times as well. And Iowa, that was a big win. So, you know, the 2-3 overall against the ranked teams. So will that be enough for the committee to put them in? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But I don't know. You know, you look at the NCAA tournament, specifically last year. Looking at men, I mean, Oklahoma got in with this kind of the star in Trae Young, right? Well, I look at this women's team with a kind of a star in Allie Patberg, right? The ability to light it up any game. And I think these kind of players belong in the tournament. So we'll see if Indiana women's basketball will get in.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd compare Patberg to Trae Young. I mean, he was dropping 35 a night. Patberg's a great player, but
She doesn't turn it over as much as Trae did.
that is saying something. But I'm putting Indiana in the tournament because the number one thing I look for of whether a team on the bubble should make the tournament is can they beat quality teams. And you look at Indiana, the win over Iowa is the biggest one, but also beating Michigan State at home, Wisconsin on the road, having 5 top 50 wins. That, to me, is more of a resume than what you see for a lot of other bubble teams. A team that can beat top-tier talent is who I want in the field, and that's why Indiana, if they can beat Purdue and get to that 2021 win mark, will be in the tournament.
And their resume is solid, and their non-conference schedule, Jordan, like you said, was not great at the time. They have a couple of wins that aged tremendously well. The UCLA win, they're a top 40 team now in the RPI.
And that's a true road game, too.
Butler top 50, that was a true road game. UCLA at the time was well below 500. That's now a top 40 win. So that aged tremendously well, and that's going to be that staple win, Butler 2, in the non-conference portion. If only they could have taken care of Grambling State. Maybe we're not even having this next question, Jack. And the next question is, make your case that this team is not a tournament team.
Well, because they haven't been consistent. Haven't won back-to-back games since early January. They haven't gotten anything going. And if they aren't able to win 2 in a row here, you can make a legitimate argument because they do have a bad loss in Grambling State. They haven't played well in over 2 months. I know the committee likes to look at body of work, but it's just I feel like they need to win 2 more to really feel safe about being in. They were in the last 4 in before the Northwestern game. I would argue they'd probably be either the last team in or first team out right now if Charlie Cream did his bracketology today instead of Tuesday morning. So Indiana has to put in more work, I think.
You know, if you look up bubble team in the dictionary, you're going to see Indiana's name next to it. Just because the consistency, kind of what Jack alluded to, it just hasn't been there this year. But then, you know, it also depends how the committee is going to view this team. We saw a different Indiana team without Allie Patberg, right? They didn't have that point guard in, and they kind of looked lost. I mean, Jalen Penn was kind of running the point, and it was a struggle, and Terry Moore admitted that. You know, but then with Patberg in, they're a different team, and they kind of have their offensive identity again. So, you know, which team does the committee see, and, you know, is their resume enough for them to, you know, convince the committee that they belong? I don't know.
3-9 in their last 12. That hurts.
If it was a decade ago, that would matter a lot more than it does today.
I agree, but I still think it hurts a lot because I think when you're a committee and you're looking down, okay, who do we have the best? I think a big question is who's playing the best basketball right now? especially when you're looking at those as large bids. And when you look at the schedule, 2 losses to Northwestern, they struggled in the Big Ten, that 4-game losing streak, it's a lot. It's a lot to juggle, and if you lose to Purdue, if you lose in the Big Ten tournament earlier than you'd like, it's going to be really tough for the committee to say, we're going to let you in, even with the WNIT championship from last year, and I think that helps them. But hey, 2-time champs isn't that bad, I guess.
Now, Griffin, got a question for you. So, that Northwestern lost 49 points. What if they lost that game maybe, say, December, January? Does that hurt them as much as it does now?
If they lost their second game to Northwestern, I still think it hurts them because Northwestern's a 14, 15 loss team. So, yeah, I still think that hurts them because Northwestern's not that good, and for some reason this team could not find any way to beat them or even slow them down.
There's one reason. Lindsey Pulliam. They cannot stop Lindsey Pulliam. Okay, Jack, what has been their kryptonite this season? We'll speed this up here going into the lightning round.
Just no consistency on offense. Hit it a bunch already. There's not really too much more to add. They've had 11 games this year where they've shot under 40% from the field. They just need to put the ball in the bucket. I don't really have much more to add on that other than that.
I think turnovers have been the problem. I mean, it's kind of been inconsistent.
Especially against Rutgers, the first game.
Yeah, I think they're around 15 or so on the season per game. I mean, that's not going to cut it. So, if they got to chop those turnovers down to really just be considered a legitimate tournament threat.
With the exception of Iowa, this team can't finish. I mean, I hate to say it, the third, fourth quarters is when they're playing their worst brand of basketball. Usually it wouldn't be out of the question for them to average 13 points in a quarter when other teams are outscoring them 20-9 in a fourth quarter of play on average, and that you can't win with that. So for me, it's you got to finish strong, and if you can't, that's their kryptonite by far because there's a lot of games they could win if they could finish.
And if you want to look optimistically, and then we're going to get into our lightning round, the 3 games before Pat Burke got hurt, she was just cold. And shooters, scorers are going to have those stretches where they're just cold. And that's what happened, and that really plagued them down the stretch in all of those games. And then obviously not having her, that mental leader, that emotional leader, and your point guard, your floor general, that's going to hurt you in close games as well, especially down the stretch, when that person is your go-to scorer. Okay, as I've now teased multiple times, it is time for the lightning round. You guys have all done this before. 10 seconds or less, and you have to take a stance, Griffin. You cannot pick both sides of the argument.
Hedge, Griffin.
Devil's advocate.
This one is pretty easy to take a stance. You have to pick a number. How many wins do they need to get into the tournament?
They're at 20 now?
They're at 18.
18, 20, 21.
You somehow managed to do it.
20. Okay, sorry. I'm going to go 20 to get in, 21 to be safe.
So 20 to get in.
20 and a half.
20.
It's like Vegas odds.
I swear, Griffin. 20? Okay, we're going to go with 20 for Griffin. Jordan.
I like 20 as well. They beat Purdue, must-win game, right? We've talked about that. And I'd say got to win one Big Ten game in the tournament to really get to that 20-win number.
Hate to be boring, but 20. They got to win 2 more.
Yeah, I think
at the very least.
Yeah, 20's pretty safe.
I'm ashamed of myself, Griffin.
I'd like to say 21 now.
Okay, Griffin, as long as you're not 20 and a half, that's all I could ask for. Can this season be considered a success, Jack, without a trip to the big dance in any way, shape, or form?
I guess you could argue if they won the WNIT, but you already did that last year. You want to take the next step as a program, you got to make the tournament.
But what are you playing for here? The end goal to win a championship or the WNIT? And at the end of the day, they want to make the tournament. If I were Terry Moore and I want to be in the field of 64 or whatever it is, so you get in. But yeah, I mean, I think that this team is struggling right now, but we'll see if they can get in.
I love to use analogies, so I'm going to use one right here. Listen, last year the WNIT championship, that was the engagement. Now we want the wedding, not another engagement. We want a wedding to happen now, and we don't want that. So for the Hoosiers, I wouldn't say it's a total bust of a season. You had some great players. You had the growth of some younger players. But I think right now it's NCAA tournament or a bust. I mean, obviously WNIT would be great, but you want more than that. You don't want to play for the next best team. You want to be the best team.
As it stands right now, what teams do they absolutely not want to see that could be a realistic path in the Big Ten tournament?
Northwestern. It could be very well the second matchup or the first matchup they play. If they get into that bye, you don't want to play them. They've just caused you so much trouble. You can't stop them. So, no, not Northwestern.
Northwestern's got their number right now. But I'd say Northwestern, Rutgers, Maryland, they're 0-5 combined against those teams this year. I don't know, if maybe you run into Iowa or Michigan State, you've had success at times against them this year, maybe you win those games, but definitely I'd say those 3 teams stay away from.
Big Ten stuff. There's a lot of teams that I want to see. Just a little bit of a curveball. I don't know if I'd want to see them play Iowa again because you only played them once. You beat them. I don't really want to see a rematch there because of how talented that squad is. Maybe you're not going to catch them off guard twice.
And here's something I want to point out about the Big Ten really fast. Let's look at a Michigan team. A few weeks ago when Michigan played Indiana, they were both hovering around that 8-9 range. Michigan went on a 7-game win streak to finish the season. Now they're the 4th seed in the Big Ten tournament with a double bye. Michigan and Indiana were on the same bar a while back, and I still think in ways they can be. At Indiana's highest, they can be a 4 seed in the Big Ten. So that's what's so fun about this conference is it's totally unpredictable this year. Outside of the top 3 between Maryland, Rutgers, and Iowa, who else is there that can't beat the other person? And that's what's so fun about this league.
Put your name on it. Do they reach the ever so coveted 20.5 win mark and make the tournament?
I'm going to say no. I just think it's really, I do think they get to 20. I just think the committee will not be forgiving. I'm going to say no, they will not make the tournament.
So you think they get to the benchmark?
I think they get to 20.
Don't get
they
in?
win the next 2, but I don't think they get in.
Interesting. Okay.
Considering there's no possible way they can get to 20.5. I would say
Get to 20.5, they're in.
If they do not get in the tournament, it'll be a failed season. However, I do think they'll get in, so we'll see.
That Northwestern loss was bad, man. I think I think that keeps them out. Not just that they lost, the way they lost. That's bad.
It's bad. All right, it's time for last word. Everybody, one word. Griffin, I'm going to save you for last year. One word on the rest of the season for the Indiana women's basketball team.
Dancing.
Wow.
Even though I don't think they're making it, but still.
Just dancing.
Dancing.
Destiny, because they control their own destiny.
I'm going to say, oh man, I want to use 2.
Is there every time that you don't want to use
Just
two?
use 2 every single time.
I like untapped potential, but I'm just going to say opportunity because at the end of the day, if this team plays their best basketball here late, they could make a run here.
We'll see. There's a lot left to be uncovered, and we will see how it unfolds. That does it for the show this week. Be sure to continue the discussion on our Twitter page at IUSTV Sports and on Facebook at IUSTV Sports. You can always give any suggestions for the show and ask any questions you might have. Toss it up. Find out if we'll catch it. We'll see you next time.